all so much for joining us today. My name is Melina Swinton, and I'm the Vice President of Community Engagement at the Youth Mentoring Collaborative. And you are joining us today to celebrate National Mentoring Day, which is funny because it actually started in the UK, and so it's their National Mentoring Day, but we thought that this was fitting for us to spend some time since we had a webinar scheduled and are really excited for our panelists today. So we can start with some introductions and then we can jump right into the agenda for today. So again, my name is Melina Swinton and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm with Youth Mentoring Collaborative, and I will pass it along to Granvel.
My name is Granvel Johnson. I coordinate the Helping Hands mentoring program for the Wake County Public School System, which is a group-based mentoring program, and I'm glad to be here.
Hi, my name is Samantha Dikolli. I'm a digital strategist at Kompleks Creative, which is a creative agency located in downtown Durham. I've been out of school for about 3 years now, and I'm also excited to be here and chat about my experiences, kind of going from college to career and how mentoring has played an impact in that so far.
Well, my name is Sonali. Please do pardon the dorm because unlike Samantha, I still am in the college life. I am a freshman at UNC Chapel Hill, but also the founder and executive director of a nonprofit general services foundation. And what they do is that they teach and provide mentorship to high schoolers across Wake County, in hopes that they can get a better understanding of the local nonprofit sector, not just through learning and listening, but also through experience. We want them to understand that it's not just all about hours and how to actually put what they want to into practice. So we provide them with funding, we provide them with support, and a system to really make it all happen.
Thank you. And then if my two colleagues from YMC can give an introduction, and then we'll just jump right into the panel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Connellan Jackson. I'm Vice President of Training and Organization Development at YMC.
Hey, everybody. I am Hannah McKinney. I'm the manager of communications and storytelling, which hopefully you can see from my digital background. I will be helping to moderate the call today, so please direct any and all questions to me.
Thank you. And then for folks who are not familiar with the Youth Mentoring Collaborative, I just kind of want to give you an overview of us. We're a capacity building organization dedicated to increasing the number of Black and Brown youth in identity affirming mentoring relationships. So we do this through trainings, webinars like these, resources, public awareness campaigns, and advocacy that support the expansion of mentoring initiatives. And we believe that through healthy youth-adult relationships, mentoring has the power to disrupt the status quo and build a safer, smarter, and more socially conscious world. And so we believe that our role in building that world is to provide critical support to nonprofits and programs through our free and low-cost consulting program. So I feel honored that I get to work with so many different organizations that work directly with young people every day, and I see it as a critical, I think, role in the youth serving ecosystem. So I am just honored to do this work and glad that we have our speakers here today. So celebrating National Mentoring Day, why do we need mentoring? I think lots of people can, give examples of why they think that mentoring is important, but there are just so many benefits to doing this. So I guess the first is that mentoring can really be, something that creates a strong adult relationship with a young person. A lot of folks have that with their parents, but not all kids are lucky enough to have a close relationship with a parent or an uncle or a sibling, for example. And so mentoring really provides some of that strong youth-adult relationship pairing that some young people don't get. And then outside of that, we know that for young people who participate in mentoring programs, they're more likely to graduate from high school. They have healthier relationships with others, and they also have a better attitude about school in general, and they know how to create goals for themselves and kind of where they want to go. And so mentors play a critical role in supporting young people's journey to adulthood. So we are going to start a little bit with some mentoring stories. I would like to start with Sonali. Tell us a little bit about your relationship to mentoring, the impact it's had on you, and why you believe in the power of mentoring.
Oh my gosh. So personally, especially as I was trying to find my way, as of course a high schooler at the time, I didn't know much about what my mentoring journey was gonna look like. And I didn't even know that I could have a mentor. I think that was the biggest thing. I was like, oh, a mentor is something you have when you're in college, like one of your professors or something that really helps find your career path for you. And I guess my idea of what mentorship looked like wasn't the reality. And so kind of coming into the nonprofit world, I realized that this was something I wanted to do, but I didn't know the how. And especially like as a sophomore in high school, you told me, hey, there's 50,000 nonprofits in North Carolina, and I would not believe you at all. And so I had a very kind executive director of a local nonprofit. She founded hers about 20 years ago, and she kind of took me under her wing. I felt very lost. I didn't know where to go, what my next steps were going to look like, how to even make this work. But she was very helpful. She provided me with resources. She provided me with a backbone, I guess, to make sure that I feel comfortable taking risks. I think the safety aspect of mentorship was something I never would have expected. I felt so strong and powerful knowing that I had someone like her that has my back, and really was kind of the spokesperson for Sonali. She introduced me to so many people. She helped me find my circle in the community, and General Services Foundation would not be where it is today without her. She would spitball the questions about the program. She would make me think more deeply, especially things that I was like, oh, this works perfectly. And then she'd be like, why can't you keep working on improving it? So it's also not just helping you provide that safety in a comfort zone, but also to help you get out of a comfort zone and think up some new ideas and make things happen. So that's my personal mentorship story, but I have had so many mentors in my life, even some silent mentors that didn't know that they were my mentor, I guess. But anyone I could learn from and grow from, I absolutely loved it. And I believe it's something that every youth should have at some point in their life.
That's powerful. Thank you, Sonali. And I love the point of just not even knowing it was a mentoring relationship. I think a lot of us find ourselves in that kind of pairing where you're like, oh, I didn't know that that's what was happening, but that's totally what was going on. She was mentoring you and supporting you and providing that for you. So thank you for that. Samantha, would you like to try?
Sure. So similarly to Sonali, I also come from the mentee side of things so far, which I hope one day to be a mentor for other people. And I think that kind of starts with having really good experiences as a mentee. Yeah, so it kind of started off similarly in college. I had no idea in high school. There was almost like a stigma, I guess, around a mentor, not in a bad way, more just like intimidating, like a mentor, like, oh gosh. But then kind of in college, we get experiences in a variety of different things. So I was lucky to run into a really few sort of helpful adults that really reached out and said, hey, you're this organization. I believe in you. You can take that step. Here's a role that you can do, or here's a leadership role that you can kind of help. And then moving into my career, I met Melina, and she was actually my first boss right out of college. So she kind of became a mentor right off the bat for me, which I'm really fortunate to have. Yeah, and so through that, I've kind of gained a variety of skills, very soft skills like communication, time management, leadership, listening, all those really important things that are valuable in the workplace. And then also harder skills. So like within the digital marketing field, which I come from, I've learned how to be a better copywriter, copy editor, content creator, all of those things have been really valuable so far in my mentoring journey.
Thank you. Yeah, I really loved having the opportunity to work closely with Samantha. I think I've just gotten lucky over the years to work with folks who are fresh out of college and find myself in a mentoring kind of dynamic. And so I have really enjoyed that. So I'm glad that you could join and speak to that, Samantha. Granville?
Yeah, sure. So growing up, I never had a formal mentoring relationship. I benefited basically from the adults in the community who took interest in me. It might be school teachers, my godparents, or some of my friends' parents. You know, they took me to various places, introduced me to new concepts and ideas, made me think about my place in the world. But similar to what Sonali was saying, they made me feel safe. You know, I felt loved and valued and safe. And that was really the most important aspect of the relationships for me. And that changed the direction of my life. And that's actually why I do what I do today. So even though I never had a formal relationship, just the community sort of like helped breathe life into me.
Thank you. And you all kind of touched on what we're about to go into next. And so, I think that there are many key elements that make mentoring relationships successful. I think we are also in the business at YMC of ensuring that people feel equipped to support young people and not cause harm, which oftentimes actually happens in mentoring relationships because people don't understand either the background that folks are coming from, they maybe don't have some of the training and skills that actually contribute to a mentoring relationship. So I'm going to pose a two-sided question here of what made one of your most successful mentoring relationships work? And then can you tell us about a mentoring relationship that didn't work and kind of what was the barrier or challenge within that relationship? And we can popcorn, so whoever is feeling inclined.
I'll go for it. So I'll start off with a good one. So it's actually an experience that I've had as actually the mentor, not the mentee. First of all, I didn't realize that I could be a mentor at age 16. Because when always you think mentor, you think adult, like an adult and a kid. Like you think that there's an age difference, but then also it might be a skill difference that's the one that provides the relationship to be the way it is. And I think that's how General Services Foundation loves to operate, that you can be a mentor at any age. And I think that's something that's really big. So I was working with a girl. It was actually one of my first projects that I helped someone else on. But she came in, she was a freshman in high school, and she came to me and she was like, how are you doing this? How have you been able to do all these projects and make it happen? And so what I like to call it is more like coaching. So that's what our sessions are. They're not just me telling her, hey, this is your step 1, step 2, step 3. And so what we really did was we walked through all the steps of a fundraiser. She was able to feel like she was in a safe space to really actually have a back and forth conversation. I think that's something that really big about mentorship, where it's a place where you can truly express yourself, your thoughts, you can learn more and gain a lot of experience just from conversation. And so we had conversations on budgeting, on marketing, on sales, on product placement and product design, and things such as that. And she actually started her own mug cake fundraiser for the nonprofit Note in the Pocket to provide clothing for children. She was so successful through her first year. She was able to raise over $800 for the nonprofit, and she absolutely fell in love with their cause. Something really big that we both advocated for was finding your niche. What is it that you're truly passionate about, and how can you implement that passion into anything you do? And so from there, she actually held a clothing drive to raise over 7,000 items, was really able to take the skill set. And once she was able to do it once, she felt like that risk was less of a risk now. It was more of an experience. And I think that's one thing that mentorship relationships really assist with, providing the experience. And from there, I think something that I've loved to see is her growth now. She is now General Services Foundation's program director. She is the teen board president of Note in the Pocket, that organization she supported back in the day. And she is the youngest staff person at the Pay What You Can nonprofit cafe in Raleigh, a place at the table. And it was all because I was able to kind of provide her the resources and the path to really help her reach her goals. And so I think one thing that I love about mentoring relationships, especially when it's a true mentorship relationship, is you always want what's best for the other person. And so being able to see her grow and be like the best version of herself has been the most exciting piece of the relationship for sure. Looking at a negative though, I can't pinpoint one exactly, but what I have realized in negative mentoring relationships is a lot of the time I feel as if there is a lack of connection between the mentor and the mentee. If you pair someone who has two different energies, that's one thing, because I feel like sometimes that can make of a great relationship with someone you would have never expected. Someone different from you can be the best thing possible, but sometimes if you don't have the same output in what you want the goals to look like of your time together, I think that can be a big challenge. I know, especially working with adult mentors, we've had that challenge sometimes because a lot of the times what we realize as we're kind of screening them and working with them to see if they would be a great fit for one of our programs, we realize that they're doing this not to benefit the students, but just to show something on their resume. And we've realized that if someone's not genuinely into it and genuinely wanting to work with a student to help them improve, grow themselves, have a safe space and do all those things, then it might not be a great fit.
That's a really good point, Sonali. And here at the Youth Mentoring Collaborative, all the work that we do is really around goal setting and helping mentoring programs get into the habit of supportive accountability. So how can you promote that within your mentoring relationships, right? Can you make sure everybody has the same goal in mind? And then how do we hold each other accountable to reaching that goal? So I love that you pointed that out. Thank you. Any one of our other panelists want to talk about their experiences?
Sure. So I'm thinking in terms of like a program coordinator position. So all of the successful mentoring relationships we've had, there was the student was interested in being mentee, being mentored. The mentor was definitely engaged, and the parent was also on board. When those three things come together, you have the potential for a wonderful mentoring relationship. The other factor too is that the mentor doesn't just drive the relationship, but allows the child to also have input. Their ideas, their experiences are also valued by the mentor. So it becomes very collaborative. The other thing I want to also really hone on to, which Sonali also mentioned again, is that the relationship is critical. It is critical. With my own mentee, who's now an adult, I went to his house one evening, and he was playing basketball in the living room with his little brother, and his grandmother was dancing around to 1960s music. And I'm sitting on the couch. And I look around, I jump up, I begin dancing around with the family. And the grandmother turns around and says, "Mr. Johnson, you aren't his mentor, you are family." Because I became a part of the collective. They no longer saw me as, because mentoring can become clinical. If your perspective is, I'm here to fix this child, I'm here to help this child overcome these obstacles, as opposed to entering into the relationship with the child. So those things are really required for a healthy relationship. I have an example also of a relationship that went south real quickly. Well, not real quickly. We had a relationship, we had a child and a mentor who were paired. And from day one, it was perfect. It was beautiful. For about 2 years, they were going on really well. Then all of a sudden, the child no longer wanted to see the mentor, and we couldn't figure out why. But during our mentor orientation, we always tell mentors, do not provide financial support to the families, period. If they need food, their bills need to be paid, call us or contact a social worker. This particular mentor decided it'd be a good idea to help the family with groceries periodically. So one day the mentor went to the house and saw a flat screen TV and wondered, where did it come from? The mentee finally told me and that the family felt judged by the mentor, all because the mentor could not maintain boundaries. I mean, it was a wonderful relationship also. And to this day, that child doesn't want another mentor. So it is critical that mentors maintain those boundaries.
Thank you for that example, Granvel. I think that that's something that a lot of mentors try to strike that balance, right? And sometimes aren't really good at doing that, which is why I think from a programmatic side, if we're running a mentoring program, it's really important that we reiterate that and you know, train them properly to ensure that they understand like where those boundaries lie. But yeah, that does not sound like a good situation. And I think, unfortunately, the result is, like you said, a young person might not trust mentoring relationships in the future. And that's just too bad because they could probably still benefit from being a part of a program like that. So I think that that's a very poignant example.
And a quick story for me. So with Melina, or both of my bosses, so Melina and Tobias Rose, who's my current boss, I found mentors in, which I've been really fortunate to be able to do. And I think one of the key elements that made both of those relationships successful is that from the beginning, the expectation was set that they were interested in me, in developing me as a professional, not just filling the role, getting the job done. They really wanted to make sure I could be the best professional that I could be. So I think that boundary was set from the beginning. That was really helpful. And I could tell that, you know, and it wasn't upfront, or it wasn't, you know, too much in a negative way or anything. I just was aware of that. And that made me almost, you know, relieved and great to hear that and say, okay, cool. We have this open relationship now and we both know what we're doing here. So that was very valuable as well. And then also with my current boss, Tobias, I think one of the key things that he does as a mentor is he doesn't always give the answers per se. He rather equips me with the tools, the tactics, the questions I should consider to be able to get to the answer. He wants to teach me how to think, how to be able to problem solve instead of just saying, okay, here's what you do. Because I think a lot of times in mentor relationships, sometimes it can be, here's the answer, here's what you should do, just, you know, talking over the mentee, really overstepping in that way. But I think Tobias is really good about, okay, here's what you should consider, here's what I think might work, but, you know, you should figure it out on your own with, of course, direction and support from me as needed as well.
Thank you, Samantha. I think one of the things I want to maybe get underneath a little bit, Granvel, you gave a really good example. I'm wondering what you feel like would have contributed to the success of that relationship. Like what were some of the things that would have made that more successful?
Well, the challenge with that situation was that it literally took the child months before she would confide in me as to why things went wrong. And she made me promise not to say anything to the mentor. So I felt like my hands were tied. And I was thinking about maybe what I might have been able to do is talk to the child and her mother together. And perhaps that would have helped. But the entire family's feeling judged. That might not have worked, but I should have at least tried.
Thank you for giving us that context. All right. So the next question I have is, what do you think is missing from the youth mentoring ecosystem? So I know, Granvel, you work in this space, and Sonali, you work in this space. What, from your perspective, do you think is missing from the mentoring ecosystem right now?
Okay, I'll dive into that one. So, you know, mentoring programs were great, helping kids set goals. We're great at providing exposure and field trips and opportunities and all these things. We go on college tours. But I don't think enough emphasis is placed on helping children navigate their worldview. You know, think about how they see the world and their place in the world. Because everything anyone does comes from their sense of self, who you vote for, the food you eat, the way you dress, your community, it's all driven by your worldview. And so we're often trying to help students become more academically engaged, or we're talking about behavior modification, whatever. But all those things are driven by that child's sense of self. So if we can help the child begin to see her or himself differently, the behaviors will automatically change. So for me, I'm all about helping kids begin to think about their worldview and then give them the tools to actually begin to push back against those thoughts that I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, and do it intentionally. So for me, that's a huge part.
Yeah, and I'd say for me, I completely like +1 on that for sure. Something else I've realized, especially within our organization, is accessibility. I think that what I've noticed is a lot of the times there are lots of people of different backgrounds that are able to have access to more mentoring resources than others. And as I was talking about at the beginning of our conversation, I do believe everyone deserves access to a mentoring relationship in their lifetime. So bridging that gap and making sure that we can go into places of all backgrounds, making sure that organizations that are in the mentorship realm are very intentional with going into different schools, different walks of life, working with different races, working with different socioeconomic backgrounds, and being very thoughtful about that, I think is very important. That I see from some mentoring organizations, but not from all. I do believe that it is something that is actually growing, and I absolutely love that. But I do think making sure that there's also the resources within the program that your organization or any organization is kind of involved in actually has access and the ability to truly fulfill a relationship of someone from a different background. Because at the end of the day, everyone has different life experiences. And so everyone comes to the table with different goals, with a different life, and making sure that the mentor can best be supportive to everyone at their stage is essential. And of course, the more like we want people who are unique, we want people of all these different backgrounds, but how can we make sure we don't help them just conform? I think is something very big.
Yeah, thank you all for saying that. I think that when I was pondering this question, I was thinking about some of the buzzwords going on right now around involving youth voice and getting youth, in leadership and kind of all these ideas around that. And I think that, a little bit of the mindset piece, Granvel, that you were referring to earlier, some of that work is necessary, right? Because a lot of young people don't know what kind of power they have. They haven't quite found their voice yet. And to just be quite frank, in our society, children have the least amount of rights among everybody, right? Adults consistently have to make all of the decisions for them or about them, and very often they're an afterthought to put input in. So I think we have a lot of work to do just societally to empower young people, but I also think that some of that is related to, mindsets around adults specifically. How do we treat them? What questions are we asking? Do we know how to step up and step back? Do we know how to guide instead of command? So I think that those are all things that I try to impart on other adult mentors who really want to connect with a young person but feel like they might be running up against some of that friction that happens when a young person is like, well, I guess I'm just listening to this grown up. You know better. You're 20 years older than me. Surely you're not going to tell me wrong. So I think we have a lot of work to do on both ends as far as kind of shifting our mindset a little bit. Samantha, did you have anything to add to that?
Just agree about the whole mindset thing. I think, again, with the adults, that's a great point that I hadn't even really considered as I think about potentially becoming a mentor in the future, making sure I'm asking the right questions, providing the right support as necessary. And like I mentioned at the start, I think I hopefully will, because I've had strong mentee experiences to kind of lean back on and say, okay, that's how my mentor handled it, or that's how whoever I know handled it. So I can hopefully, keep it going and pass that knowledge on to whoever I hopefully mentor in the future.
Yes. And I know, like, speaking with youth, especially within our programs, our biggest thing is asking for feedback. And so making sure we can keep a strong feedback loop. But something that I've actually heard And the reason why we have actually moved a lot towards peer mentorship is especially the students we work with are very shy people, at least with adults. What I've noticed is a lot of the times they're more open to speaking with other kids their age or slightly older because they feel like they're on the same level, they're on that same playing field. And what I've noticed is the adults and the mentors we've talked to who they haven't seen this as a thing, but the youth always speak of the power dynamic that comes from working with an adult. And I find that a very interesting point. Because at the end of the day, they feel like, and I know I feel the same way, like adults are all knowing. They have all this wisdom and experience, which is wonderful and which is a great place to learn from and kind of be coached on to help you find that place. But it's also very intimidating. And I think making sure that that relationship can feel very equal is very important. And it's kind of a stepping stone to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and, as we were talking about earlier, safe in the environment that they're in.
Thank you for that perspective, Sonali. And I really, for folks on this call who aren't familiar with General Services Foundation, I would encourage you to learn a little bit more about what they do. Youth-led, youth power, and I think that that is where we're headed. And so that kind of gets into this next question that I have. So what is the future of mentoring? And do you all think that there are specific opportunities or innovations that will aid in the sustainability of mentoring as a valuable support for young people?
Can I jump in on this one? Okay, so something I have noticed in workplaces and internships that I love is, especially in these jobs where like you're right out of college, you're just getting started. I think having a mentorship program is very essential. What I've noticed is when you are intentional about it, not just through saying, yeah, like this is your boss and now your mentor as well. That's one piece of it. But actually having like a buddy system, I think, has been something that has worked so well for me in the past that I hope is implemented into all like jobs across the country. Especially when I'm doing an internship and I'm like, oh, I've just started. I don't know the ropes about anything of marketing and entrepreneurship. And well, the plan is to get an experience. Of course, your boss or whoever you're working with probably has a program to help you make sure you can learn those skills, but also learning the soft skills that are oriented with it. Having someone in your corner to say, hey, like, have you thought about something like this? Have you had a conversation with this person? Oh, let me put you into connection with blank, blank, blank. They might have a great resource for you. Having someone like that always, first of all, makes the culture so much more enjoyable and vibrant, but then also has made me get so much more out of my experience in that workplace or internship experience than I would have ever received otherwise. Because at the end of the day, I'm the sort of person, and I know so many other kids like me are the sort of person where they're just in that forever learning mode. And the reason why they're here, the reason why they decided this job, or the reason why they decided this internship or whatever, a lot of the time has to do with what they can learn from it. And so making sure that we can pinpoint ways in the workplace that students can have a more one-on-one deep connection with someone, maybe not even in a leadership position, someone who's just like in their corner and has those resources would be a great place to start within all organizations.
Just gonna amplify Sonali's message there. Yes, I totally agree. Having the infrastructure within the workplace, especially early on for those early career folks, because I think there is kind of that assumption, oh, you'll be mentors with your boss or they'll provide guidance or whatever it is, but it's not always that way. Your mentor is not, your boss is not always your mentor. You get lucky if it's so, but it's not always that way. And so then there's kind of that assumption, oh, you'll find someone, there's an executive, there's this or that. But you know, especially for people that are more shy, more nervous at a new company, they're very intimidating, all these new feelings, a new city, maybe. I think we actually need that very intentional program established so they can, you know, easily sign up and feel more comfortable. And doing it that way is definitely going to be very important in the future of mentoring moving forward within the workplace.
and thinking as a program manager, just having spaces like this where people can come together and collaborate and share ideas and learn best practices and network, I think it's going to be critically important because there's so many people out there just in their little silos doing the best they can. And some of them are actually doing things that are actually harmful, but having these sort of spaces where people can just talk and glean ideas, I think is just critically important.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing that. I think as I kind of reflected on that question, I thought about just some of the things that have happened over the last few years. COVID-19 has really exacerbated, I think, a number of challenges. And so a few things have been happening. Mentoring has been kind of like, I think known in some spaces is like the thing to do if a kid is having a behavioral issue or they're having a challenge in school, right? Like that's the go-to. And the truth is, while some mentoring relationships can, I think, positively impact a student who might be struggling with those challenges, like mentoring isn't secondhand for having access to mental health resources, for example. And so I think here at the Youth Mentoring Collaborative, we're really excited to be thinking about how can we equip mentors with clinical frameworks and modalities from mental health backgrounds so that when they're speaking with young people and they're spending time with them, they can really make sure that they are supporting them and not harming them. And especially, like I said, because a lot of people treat mentoring like a secondhand support for those youth. And so I think as far as the future of mentoring, I know here at our organization, I'm going to close out and give you all a preview of what we're working on, but we're currently planning a curriculum and a framework called Healing Centered Mentoring, and where we will be training mentoring practitioners and folks who run mentoring programs, giving them the tools to really, train up their mentors so that they feel ready and prepared to support the young people that they're working directly with. So I would say that that's something that I'm very excited about on the horizon. I think secondly, we live in an age of technology, and so I've actually consulted with a number of our nonprofit partners that have been rolling out e-mentoring components of their program, so really helping them think through considerations of that. So what are the safety things that you need to think about? What kind of insurance do you need to have if you're rolling out that kind of program? So I've been spending a lot of time with helping folks think about how to integrate technology into mentoring, which has been really exciting. So I think that that's something that we'll probably see more of in the future. All right. I think those are all the questions I had. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe open it up to folks who are in attendance. Would love to get some questions going if anybody has any. And then we can also, hit some other notes that our panelists, maybe if you all had additional thoughts. So I'll pause here.
Well, I'll chime in with a thought. I think it's critically important that mentors become aware of their biases, whether it's gender-based, racially based, or any other kind of biases, because those things, if we're blind to them, we're operating constantly out of those biases. An example is, I was walking across campus one day and I saw a young Hispanic man raking leaves. And I started to speak, but decided not to. Instead, I smiled and I waved at him. And when he turned around and said, "Hello, sir, how are you?" I realized why I decided not to speak. I assumed he was undocumented. I assumed he didn't speak English. I assumed everything about him within 5 seconds. And here I am, smiling and waving. But because of the way we've all been socially programmed, had somebody said, "Granvel, I have a scholarship for Hispanic students," I would have completely written him off, not because of him, but because of me. And there was an instance where I saw an African-American young man standing by a building. He was dark-skinned. And I thought, why is he over there? And it dawned on me, had he been white or lighter complected, I wouldn't have questioned it. So it's really critically important that we begin to examine our biases and see how they play out in all types of ways. If we don't, we end up hurting our students rather than supporting them.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think the story that you gave earlier is a great example of that, of like passing the judgment, because people often want to, you know, count other people's pockets, for example. So if that person decided to help with groceries and then they saw this new piece of technology in this family's house, then they automatically just assume, right, that they were spending their money someplace else. And so I think even I definitely agree with the thought process that we need to address our own biases, but even just checking our assumptions, like that in and of itself is a part of that process of like becoming more aware about our biases, right? So what assumptions am I making about this young person? What assumptions do I make about the world when I approach this relationship? And how might that impact how I communicate with them, or what I talk about, or my tone, or any of those things? I think once we kind of get into a habit of doing that, it gets a lot easier to stop yourself and have a point of reflection.
Yes, and kind of jumping on that, I know Melina, you were speaking about this earlier, and how in reality, a lot of times, like, mentorship is seen as a fix to the troubled kids. And I think that kind of comes back to making sure the right people are in mentoring roles. Because if they're in the mentorship world for that savior complex, a lot of the times you'll see conversations like that where you're going to be putting your biases onto them. If they're troubled, why are they so troubled? And is troubled even the like right term to use? Like, that's the first question that should come up, because there's probably a reason. If they're like having difficulty in class or something, there's probably a reason why, and that doesn't mean they're troubled. But of course, if you're coming in with a savior complex mind frame, that's not really gonna work out for the best. So I think reframing mentorship as a whole, on the why mentorship, I think is probably the largest part. And I think this is something I talk about a lot. Mentorship is kind of like eating healthy or exercise. It's not like a fix. It's more of like it's not really, I wouldn't call it a preventative measure, but it's more something that you want to have throughout your life. It's not something only when things go bad do you want to mentor. Um, it's kind of like we talk about all these health challenges and stuff where if you eat healthy and you eat right, there's a lesser likely chance that a negative effect might come. Yeah, that's true. But it also provides a safe place, a safe experience, and things that every kid should have, not just when things go wrong.
I like that framing a lot, and I think that that's part of the work that we want to try to do at Youth Mentoring Collaborative is this idea around the why, right? Who's being mentored and why are they being mentored? And I think that the onus is on all of us, and when I say all of us, I mean mentors, people who are mentoring practitioners, running programs. I think that we need to continually ask ourselves that, like, who's in our program, who's being mentored, and then why are these mentors mentoring? Like, why do we think that this is the right intervention, to support this young person? I think that answering some of those questions can really draw out important insights. So I really like that you pointed that out, Sonali. All right, any other questions or thoughts before I transition to our little preview of healing-centered mentoring?
Looks like we have one question. So this person has always been under the impression that mentors wear the pants in the relationship, so to speak. So can any of you guys speak to, like you all said earlier, the power dynamics there? Who really is in charge, or is it more of a collaborative thing?
I'll jump in. To me, I feel like in traditional mentoring relationships, there is that true power dynamic where the mentor has all of the say. But my hope is that, especially in mentoring relationships nowadays, that isn't the case. I hope that it's a collaboration, because at the end of the day, how I see a mentor is as more as a coach. So kind of as we were talking about earlier, it's more of the case where the mentor provides advice and feedback, but helps get them to that place. I think Samantha was talking about how her boss right now challenges them to problem solve and challenges them to figure out how to best reach their goals, through kind of providing some little pieces to get them there. So you're not just the one giving all the answers, because at the end of the day, no matter what, you're not all knowing. But even if you do have an answer, how to help your mentee truly problem solve for themselves, I think is part of where that collaboration piece comes in. You might be providing the resources, but how are they going to be the ones using it? So you're not, like, I guess, spoon feeding them, but you're more there to be a helpful friend. And so that's why I see mentoring relationships personally as a lot more collaborative than like power dynamic related. And that's why I think it's very essential to think about how you decide who's a mentor and who's not, because you want to make sure that there's a very big sense of equality, that there is both of you really having a conversation together and not just spitballing information out the other, to make sure that everyone is really having the proper outcome in that relationship.
Yeah, just to add on to that, if I'm the mentor, I want to learn from the mentee, like absolutely. It's not a one-sided relationship. It should definitely be symbiotic. I think that's the term. Both going both ways for sure. Because, if they come from a different background, different experiences, or again, however you guys are paired together, I would definitely encourage, the mentees to learn just as much as the mentees are in that way.
Yeah. Go ahead, Granvel.
Yeah, real quickly, I know you're trying to get to the next section. From my perspective, a mentor is an adult friend to the children. They're there to walk alongside them, do life with them. And there is some level of responsibility when you're all together as the adult. But other than that, it's a collaboration. It's an adult friend doing life with the child, helping the child see how wonderful they are.
I like that. Walking alongside, right? So you're not carrying them on your back. So, I was going to chime in and say I used to be a part of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and we had a program where we mentored, senior fundraiser folks. So, even though we had a traditional mentoring relationship, part of this program was for me to teach my mentor something. And so we actually worked on, this is kind of typical because I think it was generational. He was, 40 years my senior. So I was teaching him, something about social media and how to leverage that to fundraise. But it was a really cool experience because it was like, oh, I do have something that I can teach my mentor. Like, he's giving me all these amazing skills, but I actually do know something that he feels is valuable and that he's actually interested in learning. So I would encourage folks, as far as any kind of programs that you might be running, or if you are a mentor, to make that offer to your mentee to ask them to teach you something. That's often a suggestion when I'm working with mentoring programs. They ask, we need some activities. Like, ask your mentees, like, what do they like doing? And is there something that they could be teaching mentors? And I think that that's a good way to engage them and get them really excited about being in a mentoring relationship. So before we hop off, I wanted to, like I said, give you all a preview. First, before I transition, thank you so much to our panelists, Sonali, Samantha, and Granvel. You all have been tremendous, and I'm very grateful that you could join us for this conversation. Thank you for your point of view. I'm hoping that the folks on this call felt like they got some valuable input from you. So I'm going to share my screen so you all can see the logo. And I'm also going to right now shout out Kompleks Creative, who helped us with our most recent rebrand, and who also put together our new healing-centered mentoring logo. So on your screen there, you will see it paired, and we're just really excited to be able to get started on that. So just to give you a little bit more context, We know, like I said earlier, that mentoring can be used as a strategy to support healthy relationships for young people, especially those who might be dealing with mental health challenges, for example. We also know that a lot of the youth that are in mentoring relationships, especially in North Carolina, tend to be from Black and Brown communities and or communities that don't have a ton of resources or that might even have mental health stigma in their community. And so some of the work that we know needs to be done is really this building trust with the community around what mental health is and how to tap into some of the resources available to do that. So we are currently creating a framework that will build the capacity of mentoring organizations to increase the number of youth receiving evidence-based mental health services through mentoring specifically. And so our goal is long-term that these folks feel like they have the skills they need to meet the needs of their young people. We hear a lot of times somebody might come to us and say, hey, my young person, their family is dealing with food insecurity, or maybe their family is dealing with houselessness. What do I do? Like, this is what's happening with my young person. They're acting out in school. Maybe they're skipping school. They don't want to go to school. They don't have the motivation. I don't know how to help them. And I think that, you know, there are a number of ways that we can be supporting mentors to say, okay, this is how you might have this relationship. This is how you might have this conversation with this young person. Oh, and by the way, here are all the resources that you need to might refer a family, or for our mentoring programs that actually oversee those, what is your internal process for referring your young person and their family to the next set of resources? Because we can't always do everything within the mentoring program itself. So how do you set up your processes and procedures to really funnel those kids into the right sort of path to get the help that they need? We will be recruiting the first cohort of organizations starting in January. There will be a formal application process. So for folks who might be interested in joining us for that, we'll be posting information via e-news and on our website, hopefully in the next month or so, about how you can become involved in that. And yeah, if there isn't anything else, we're going to transition in just a bit, but I want to thank our panelists again so much for providing your insight. And I can let us stay on for a little bit in case folks have thoughts or notes or anything. But thank you all so much for joining us today.
And thank you so much for having us.
Yay.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Well, before we hop off too for our guests, I guess I can let you know what else we have going on. The Youth Mentoring Collaborative, we have our 2022 Carolinas Youth Mentoring Symposium will be happening on Saturday, November 12th at the Friday Center in Chapel Hill. Hannah just went ahead and dropped the link in the box. You can still get your tickets now. Super excited about that. Sonali will actually be a speaker on our opening plenary about youth power and youth leadership. She will be joined by some other amazing folks. We'll also have a preview of the Healing Centered Mentoring Curriculum. We'll have a session for that there. We're also going to have lots of cool panels for professionals, but for the first time, we have a youth track where young people can go and be a part of the conference and have session content specifically for them. So we've got a music industry panel where we can learn about folks from all across the music industry, not just performers, but folks who run organizations, who did brand management, etc. We have a youth entrepreneurship session, and we also have one about how to leverage your mentoring relationships to maximize your own personal growth. So really excited to be able to welcome more than 200 professionals and young people to UNC Chapel Hill at the Friday Center. So I hope that you all can join us, and that's going to be it. Check out some of the links that Hannah included in the chat, and I'll leave us on for a few minutes while you grab that information. Thank you so much.